Hi guys, it's Manga here. If you've just joined the Valorant hype, it's a great time to try out the game when many people are playing the game for their first time. In this video, I take a look at some of the 7 beginner tips that will hopefully improve your gameplay so you can start piling on those wins. Just as a note, I'm not going to go through some obvious tips like have the right settings or choose the right crosshair because in my opinion those are personal preferences. Rather, I'm going to go through some actionable tips that will hopefully improve your gameplay immediately once you grasp some of these concepts. As a second note, these are my opinions only, so if you have another tip that I didn't mention, post it in the comment below and let's get sharing. Alright, so let's get into the video. One of the most important things about playing FPS games is crosshair placement. I see a ton of people right now, especially ones hopping over from the League community, have terrible crosshair placement. The most common problem I'm seeing are players who place kind of a crosshair between the ground and center whilst walking, obviously indicating that they're kind of new to the game. What you should be doing instead is keeping your crosshair at a headshot range as you move around the map if you're expecting enemies. Obviously if you're not, then it's okay to, let's say, point a knife or, just run. This means you can take an immediate shot to the head rather than needing to readjust your crosshair, which by then you're most likely dead to a good player. Additionally, you should be hugging the crosshair against the wall and moving into a position as you move around into an area. So let's roll a clip. Okay, so in this clip you can see I'm already holding my crosshair at a headshot range as we enter B site. I'm looking around and as you can see here, if I pause the video, I'm hugging the wall constantly, so in case someone is there, I can take a quick clean shot on them without me needing to readjust my crosshair and hopefully a headshot. As I'm moving down, I then hear someone walking or running towards me. I wait, I take the headshot on the Omen as he started walking instead, and then I hit the last person down the corridor and I take him out as well. Although an obvious tip, I see literally everyone still doing this. When trying to take fights or trades, one of the key parts is remembering you're more likely to win the round if you're versing one person rather than a 1 vs 2 or 1 vs 3 in the open. This is where I see a lot of newbies charging straight out into the open, exposing themselves from 500 billion angles. Instead, you should be hugging walls as you walk up, taking up an angle so you're only exposed to one angle or max 2. Of course, not all situations give you that freedom, such as if you're trying to retake a site, but always keep that in mind. It's always best, for example, if you're defending, to hold an angle that only one person can peek you at, rather than like 2 or 3. Alright, so let's roll a clip from C9Tenz, a professional Valorant player. You can see right now he's peeking in front of the portal, and from the right side, you see someone already holding an angle, and on the left side from bathrooms, you got boxes covering him. He then knows that they're exiting from the bathroom, so he readjusts himself. You can see here that he's been protected from the short or in front of portal because the boxes are in front of him, and from the left side he's already protected by Phoenix's wall. So the only angle he really needs to contest is the right side, and he manages to secure a kill. Now if we move over to the clip, we can see him then eventually, he's going to move into the position, he sees someone coming from portal, takes another one out, and he finally falls. But he's already done his job, he's taken out 2 people. In my opinion, I wouldn't have peeked that because there was someone still in bathrooms, but it's C9Tenz we're talking about, he's one of the best Valorant players in the world. So, I'm going to combine checking corners and trading into kind of one tip because they're very relatable when you're attacking or retaking a site. So I'm going to start off with corners. It's pretty obvious that checking corners is really important. So I'm going to roll a clip and show you why it's important to check all corners. You can see in this clip that BoxBox is pretty diligent, he's checking all corners, except the last corner which ultimately got him killed, as well as some of his teammates. The reason why I rolled this specific clip is a lot of people do check corners, but only half-heartedly, or they don't check all their corners. In this situation, if BoxBox checks that last corner, he would have most likely gotten the Omen and his teammates wouldn't have died. Now, this is definitely something that I've seen with more newbie players, is when one person gets into a site, let's say if you're attacking a site, and he dies, the rest of the team kind of gets scared and retreats back. Yes, it sounds kind of dumb, but I've seen a lot of new games when this happens. Trading a 1-4-1 when attacking a site is actually a good thing, because it's easier to defend a site with the same number of people, so it's important that you take the trade kills when you can, and not let one of your teammates just die for the sake of dying. This is a fairly obvious one, but I think I've seen a lot of newer players who have hit their first Valorant games not really check out the maps in the custom games. This is really obvious when you see someone, for example, trying to retake a site from A to B, and they're going the longest possible path and they just don't make it because they just walked for like a minute. As a note, I'm bringing this up because unrated games will matter when you eventually play ranked, so throwing away games early because you just don't know the map can actually be a bad thing if you want to climb the Valorant ladder, because your normal or your unrated MMR actually matters when ranked comes out. With that being said, it's important to understand a few elements of the map, so let's list a few. Knowing where you can wallbang and with what specific guns is actually pretty important and kind of underrated, especially if you're trying to pick up some early kills or if you're playing with, let's say, the Spike. Where you can smoke is also really important, especially if you're playing characters like Brimstone and you need to defend or attack a site. And obviously, as mentioned, where are the corners that people can specifically hide? Obviously, these are not all the things that you should know, and one of the main things you should know is just how the map's laid out and how you can get from one side to the other if you need to move around quickly. This is especially important in maps like Bind, where there are teleporters in the game and you might not understand how they work if you're just hopping into the game for your first time, so just play around there. Okay, let's be honest, we all love a good rush. Especially if you come from Counter-Strike, a rush once in a while during the game is actually a good strategy, especially if you want to change the pace up if you've been playing slowly, or if they're constantly stacking one site. In Valorant, however, it can be a different story. Generally, rushing in Valorant is much harder, and it's important to figure out what team comp you're up against. Characters like Sage and Raze make it really difficult to enter a site, especially with a utility like their walls and their grenades, and unless you're willing to take a lot of damage, you're probably going to be stopped in your track. So unless you're a super coordinated pro team, it's probably time to play a bit slow and try to make picks rather than going for that rush play. If you're still interested in pushing a site quickly, at least bait out some utility from the enemy before making that play. Okay, you've lost that round and you might have a bit of money to buy that Spectre and Light Armor. You kinda wanna get revenge on the enemy for killing you, but the question is it really worth it? Sometimes it's better off saving a round rather than wasting all your credits just to have no money in the next round if you lose, and again. Communicate with your team when you think you should really save, especially if most of your team is also low on money. One of the best things about Valorant is you actually have a minimum amount calculated for your next round. If you want to say buy Vandal with full armor, you know you need at least 3,900 credits, so you're able to spend whatever you can to that amount. Sometimes buying something like a Sheriff or a Marshal can be a good strategy if you can get 1 or 2 picks early in the round and you can pick up the enemy's weapons for your team. Just make sure you're always communicating with your team just in case you do go for that extra little buy. And my final tip is an obvious one, but I see a lot of people not doing this, and that is learn the skills of everyone. If you see a lot of pros playing right now, they're playing every character, they're not trying to one-trick anyone. Like League, someone who has knowledge over all the champions will potentially play better than one that doesn't. Having knowledge over what each character does and the limitations of each is important in Valorant. This means going to a custom game and messing around with some of these characters, and then actually going to games and playing these characters. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't have like 1 or 2 main characters that you like to play. This is just to say, play some of the other characters so you know what they can do, so when you're up against them, you know exactly their limitations. So there you go, hopefully one of these tips will give you a bit more of an edge on Valorant, especially as you're hitting some of your first games or if you've just been playing for a while. As a recap, have good crosshair placement, don't overexpose yourself, always check your corners and trade off if you can, learn the maps, stop rushing, know when to save a round, especially if you're communicating with your team around that, and learn the skills of every character in Valorant. If you like this video, make sure you throw a sub and a like so I can shoot out more content to you guys all around Valorant. Thanks for watching.